Britain's King, King Charles III, has arrived in Kenya on his first trip to Africa since becoming the monarch, after the death of his mother, Queen Elizabeth, last year. Now, he was greeted by President William Ruto in Nairobi. King Charles is expected to acknowledge painful aspects of Britain's near 7-decade colonial rule in Kenya. Let's talk to our correspondent Malcolm Webb, who's following this visit from the capital, Nairobi. So the first visit to Kenya as the British monarch, what's each side hoping to achieve from the visit?
King Charles surprised people last year at a Commonwealth summit when he expressed personal sorrow for slavery. This was before he became king. Slavery, which of course over centuries earned great wealth for Britain and its monarchies. Now that followed other Commonwealth members, former British colonies, notably Jamaica and Barbados, a significant part of whose populations is made up of the descendants of enslaved people, calling to re-evaluate their connections to Britain's monarchy. Now in Kenya's case, ever since independence from British colonial rule in 1963, successive Kenyan governments have maintained close relations with Britain, and the current government of President William Ruto appears to be no different. It's expressed support recently for Israel, stands with the West on many other issues, and a visit from the British monarch internationally will be seen to cement that allegiance. However, many Kenyans on social media and campaign groups see it differently. A group of activists here who are campaigning for justice for abuses allegedly committed by British soldiers recently British soldiers who train in northern Kenya. The activist group said that this week Kenyan police didn't allow them to hold a demonstration or even a press conference to raise their grievances, and at the same time a growing number of communities across Kenya are calling not just for apologies but also for reparations to be paid for atrocities committed and for land grabs that took place under British colonial rule. We spoke to some of them. Let's hear what they had to say. Kipchoge Chomu's great-grandfather led an armed resistance against evictions and land grabbing under British colonial rule. He was called Koitalel Samwe, and he's commemorated at this mausoleum in southwest Kenya. He was a chief of the Nandi people. In 1905, a British colonial officer summoned him to a peace meeting and shot him in the head.
We got the report from those elders who were there that the next day they found Koitalel Samwe's body headless, and they buried that headless body. And that's why one of the demands on one of the appeals we are making to the British government is that they please return that head.
Kipchoge believes the Makeba trophy taken by the officer is in the vault of a British museum, but none have acknowledged it. 50 years after Koitalel was killed, people in central Kenya rebelled against the British after settlers grabbed their farmland. Researchers estimate the British killed more than 10,000 people in the crackdown on the rebels known as Mau Mau. Many more were detained in fenced villages and concentration camps. 10 years ago, the British government compensated about 5,000 survivors, but it's never admitted responsibility. This is what remains of one of the camps. It's now a school. Survivors said that this cell was used for solitary confinement and torture. The British torture methods in rooms like this included castration and rape to extract confessions and information. King Charles is expected to talk about Britain's colonial past on his visit to Kenya. People are waiting to find out what he's going to say. After Koitalel was killed, much of the land of the Nandi and Kipsigis peoples was grabbed for tea plantations. Many of their descendants still live in nearby shacks.
We are asking King Charles III also to touch on the same. Say something about these lands. Why are they still being used by the British while the Kipsigis people are suffering?
It's Charles' first trip to Africa since he became king. It comes as Britain's facing growing calls for justice to account for its colonial past. Malcolm Webb, Al Jazeera, Nyeri County, Kenya.